Welcome to the Rachel Roth Show. I am so excited about today and our guest because she is truly a powerhouse of a human being. She has been through so much, but she now empowers women in people, a lot of people, all people, but I am so passionate about helping women in this area specifically, maybe because I'm a woman. I don't know, but let me tell you a little bit about her. Andrea Nakayama is our guest today, and she is a functional medicine nutritionist and educator who has led thousands of clients and now teaches even more coaches and clinicians around the world in a revolution, reclaiming ownership of both their own and their clients' health. She hosts a 15-minute Matrix podcast and is the founder and former CEO of Functional Nutrition Alliance. Andrea draws on systems biology, mental models, root cause methodology, and the therapeutic partnership to offer long-awaited solutions for the rapidly growing chronic illness epidemic. We are going to talk about this, that she lost her young husband to a brain tumor in 2002, and I just can't even imagine it. But she discovered a passion through this journey for using food as personalized medicine, and is now regularly consulted as the nutrition expert for the toughest clinical cases in the practices of many world-renowned doctors. So she trains thousands of practitioners each year in her methodology so that she can help them to become the last stop for their clients and patients, as well as a trusted referral partner for doctors in their area. So Andrea, thank you so much for being here. And I mean, that story just encompasses so much. I know that we're going to kind of dive in. That barely scratches the surface of all the things that you do, but I really am so thrilled and so honored to have you on today and to learn from you. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. And I'm so excited that you have a passion for not just helping women, but recognizing the impacts of functional medicine and functional nutrition.
Yes. So if you have spoken to me for more than 5 minutes in my life, you know that I am on this deep dive and deep journey into just learning how food impacts our bodies. And so during COVID was really kind of that time when I started to dive in and understand how food impacts our body and how food can heal our bodies or hurt our bodies. And so, Andrea, first and foremost, I would love for you to tell me about your story and the unimaginable of having your husband, you're 7 weeks pregnant, and your husband being diagnosed with a brain tumor and them giving him 6 months. And I can't imagine how difficult this is for you to talk about, but it was also the inception of all of your journey. And so talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And it was unimaginable, and it also is my life. So it's easy for me to talk about in some ways, and it always also is deep and it's emotional, which is true for any of us. In functional nutrition, I really like to honor the stories. So I appreciate that you're asking me about my story. And I always had a passion in my adult life for food and for health. And what I was noticing is what I think was the beginnings of my own autoimmunity that I did not know about, where I started to look to food to realize, wait a minute, when I eat this, my face gets a little bit more puffy. This is what's happening. Why is this happening? We were living in San Francisco. We were exposed to, beautiful farms and farmers markets. We had a community of friends where we would have these great dinner parties, and I'd shop at the farmers market, and we'd have so much fun with it. And that was our life, where I sort of was dabbling in the realm of nutrition and learning and listening to my own body. And then I got pregnant, which we were trying to get pregnant, which was wonderful. And 7 weeks later, as you said, my husband was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor. It's called a glioblastoma multiforme. It seemed to come out of nowhere. In retrospect, I can see a thing or two that maybe was a sign of a brain tumor, but otherwise we had no indication that this was happening. Um, and that kind of propelled us into a whole different level of looking at everything and anything we could do to support his health.
Mm.
So while my late husband was in the medical library at the University of California, San Francisco, researching medical trials. He's in his early 30s. So he's looking at what are my best chances to live and be a father, which he always wanted to be. And I was looking at what else could we be doing. And of course, my passion was in food, but I didn't know what I know now, certainly, but I didn't know the impact we could have. So that's where I really dove in. I think of that time as my boot camp. Of course, I was supporting him, but I also had to support my own body. I was pregnant and already, like I said, feeling some things going awry. And we did a tremendous amount without me fully understanding the physiological and biological impacts. I want to say here that I was already thinking functionally or like a functional nutritionist in that I knew it wasn't my job to try to combat the cancer. It's not like we weren't doing chemotherapy, radiation, 2 craniotomies. It was my job to address the terrain in which the cancer existed.
Oh,
So
wow.
that is a distinction that I want to make that I think we often misconstrue in the realm of what functional nutrition can do and what functional nutrition really is. I'll end that little story with the fact that Isamu, my late husband, lived 2.5 years. So he lived past that 6 months diagnosis. He died when our son was 19 months old. That son is now 22 and just graduated from college. So it is a long time ago, which also allows me to speak about it. But it was the kind of training ground, the boot camp for not just my passion about food as medicine, but my passion for working with people in those critical stages of life, which is a growing population of people who are facing chronic illnesses where they are sick or struggling and just not getting better.
Yeah. You know, I have a hard time not getting choked up when I think about what he must have been going through as a early 30s, and of course what you were going through at the same time, but him being faced with that death sentence that they gave him. You've got 6 months to live and you're going to be a father for the first time. Like, I just
Yes.
can't imagine my husband being in that same boat, and it just breaks my heart. And I am just so sorry that you went through that, and I'm so sorry that he went through that.
Thank you,
um
Rachel. And I just want to point out that recognition that you have in that moment that Isamu became more spiritual than I had ever seen him. His brother and I used to joke, like, when did he become like Buddha, right? Like, when did that happen? But when we're faced with these trials in life, there's a lot that comes to light
Yeah.
for us. And I think it's just really wise that you pointed out what he was going through in that recognition. And I think one of the challenges with chronic illness is that we're not faced with that same uh, ending point.
Right.
We're not
Right.
faced with the end, the promise of life, which is one promise: we are all going to expire at some point. We're just in this limbo. And I have a real passion for talking to people who are in that place of limbo. It's not death, it's not cancer, but it's not getting better. And we're struggling with that place, that in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say, and we'll move on after this, but I think that it is really beautiful how you are honoring his legacy with what you're doing. It gets me choked up because I would hope that I could honor my husband's legacy if I was in your same shoes. And so I really I just think it's really beautiful. And I respect it so, so much. So I'm going to pull it together. I promise I won't cry this whole interview. I feel your story so deeply. It
Thank
really,
you.
you know, so, okay. Okay. So this started you on a journey, and you were in publishing, basically
Yes.
like corporate America, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
so you,
Creative corporate America. But yes.
right. But still, yeah. So you're faced with this decision to say, do I want to continue to pursue this passion that I've discovered, or do I want to stay? So talk to me about kind of what happened next. Like, what did you start to do next? And then what did it turn into?
Yeah, I love this question, Rachel. It was really a big decision for me because I had developed this passion. I really became the person in my community of friends and my son's, preschool and kindergarten community who brought the healthy, yummy food. So it was for me at that point really about the food. What could I do with food? It was less about the physiology and the direct impact on the physiological function. And I had a wake up call, which was a friend getting diagnosed with colon cancer. And this friend who was in my community here in Portland, Oregon, where we had moved when my husband was alive, um, she's a naturopath. And I thought, I did this thing, Rachel, where I was like, move in, move out, move in, move out. I was like, I want to help, but wait, they're all naturopaths. They don't need me. What do they need me for? Because they know what they're talking about when it comes to nutrition. And it wasn't until she came to me and said, I want your help. Everybody else is going to cook for the family, but I want your help figuring out what I do to recover from surgery, if there's anything I need to do long term. And I thought, I need to learn more, or maybe I need to hire someone. And I started a quest, and this is a while ago. So there wasn't as much noise, as you referred to earlier, in nutrition as there is now. There wasn't social media in the same way. But I started to search and realized when I went to nutritionist website that this was my calling, that this was what I needed to do, how I kept that legacy alive, where my passion really lay. And I had to make a big decision because at this point I was a single parent, a widow. I had a really good career. I worked from home on the West Coast for a company in New York, all the right things. I had a creative job. I had to decide to leave an established career and start from the beginning, meaning I had to actually put myself back through school to do what I wanted to do. So it was a big leap. I knew I had to take it. It took many years. And I think that although the two industries seem unrelated, there's so much of what I did in what I do now that also sets the work I do, the work we do at the Functional Nutritional Alliance, apart from a lot of other people in the field, because I understand storytelling, I understand production value, I understand the experience of the user, the learner, the patient, the client. And so that all has made its way into the work, which I think is a really unique approach. But it was a huge leap for me to make, and it took years for me to put myself back through school.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Did you do any of that simultaneously while you were still working as a publisher?
I did. I did. I
Yep.
did as much as I could do simultaneously. And when it got to the coursework that was too cumbersome for me to do at the same time, I had to, quote unquote, come out to my publishing
Yeah.
family world that I was pursuing this other venture, step back, bring somebody in to replace me, and ultimately phase myself out.
Yeah. Well, I started my own business on the side of working in corporate America because I was not passionate about what I was doing in corporate. And so, yeah, I had an 18-month-old baby and I was pregnant and starting a business on the side. And my husband was traveling full time for his job. So was not facing the things that you had faced, but I understand that struggle of juggling
Totally.
a small child and juggling, starting a new career that you're way more passionate about, you know, and all of that. And so you find somehow it energizes you to pursue something that you love and that you're passionate about. And that's when I think back, I'm like, where did I find the energy? Where did I find, I was pregnant. I was exhausted. You know, how did I do
Totally.
this? But you just find it energized me somehow, like building and building and building this other business. So that's amazing. So you're going through school and all that. So talk to me about starting. Did you then launch the Nutrition Alliance? Like, was that your first step? Like, what happened next?
Yeah, I started by seeing clients one-on-one. This is back in 2009, so dating myself, but I'm happy to do that because there's a lot of experience in there. And I started seeing clients and teaching little classes in my living room. I want to just put that in perspective for those who may also be starting businesses like you have, Rachel, that we have to start somewhere. I think people think that the 7-figure, 8-figure business happens overnight. But I literally was teaching classes on sugar in the body and brain, fat versus fiction in my living room for a donation of $5 to $10. And there was no money coming back because of what I was putting into the curriculum and the offering. So that got me in front of people. It got me comfortable talking. There were some opportunities I had where I taught an Eat to Beat Cancer class with a local naturopath, and I was kind of the chef in the picture until I got paid and was a co-teacher. So I was putting myself out there, getting the practice, getting in front of people, learning how to talk about things in a way that made sense to people, learning how to tell my story. And then it grew and grew and grew. In 2012, I started to create a training for practitioners because in those 3 years, I was having so much success in practice that more people, coaches and clinicians, were coming to me asking me, how are you having these outcomes? And I had to step back and think, wait a minute, what am I doing that's different than what others are doing is allowing me to have clinical success? I thought, Rachel, this was going to be a little mentorship program. And that was the launch of what became the Functional Nutrition Alliance, Full Body Systems, which is my training for coaches and clinicians who want to bring functional nutrition into their program or even aspiring functional nutrition counselors. And now I'm training thousands of practitioners around the globe in over 68 countries every year in those methodologies that took time to unpack. And that I ultimately was able to align with functional medicine. What I was doing was aligned before I knew what to call it. And so that kind of emerged and evolved over time. But I had to start by doing the work. And it's a step that I think we often overlook in our own healthcare and also in our business growth or aspirations.
Wow. I love that story more than you could possibly know because I was having meetings in my living room with my new business. Like that is so, so refreshing to hear. And there were times that I felt defeated and exhausted and I didn't know how I was going to continue on. And I love that story so much. And you push through and yeah, you've got to go through the struggle. I always hear this one quote and it says, don't skip the struggle. And I'm like, don't
Yes.
skip the struggle. The struggle is where the good stuff is happening. And it's like forming you into the resilient person that you can be. But unless we go through the struggle, we actually don't know how resilient we are, you know?
True
So
too.
Eat to Beat Cancer is I mean, what a incredible tagline that is. That is absolutely, I mean, eat to beat anything. Eat to beat
Right.
any, fill in the blank. Like it doesn't even have to be
Yes.
cancer.
Yes.
So, okay, I want to get kind of like nitty gritty on talking about daily practices of what the normal person can do. I want to tell you, I was driving home from a business meeting 3 days ago. And I had left, and it was about lunchtime when I left, and I was starving, hadn't had a bite to eat, whatever, was just super hungry. And so I'm driving home. I had a 3-hour drive, and I'm looking everywhere for something healthy to eat. And Andrea, I look through things through such a different set of lenses now. And I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder the United States is 60% of the US is obese, is overweight, is struggling with depression by, extremely processed foods. I mean, have you seen the link to depression with processed foods? Like, listen, I'm not going to teach you anything, but like, no wonder this is what is happening to our country. I could not find a decent place to stop to eat, And so I really had to do some digging, and I just was amazed because I thought, I am actively seeking something healthy to eat. How many people are not actively seeking something healthy, and they're just eating whatever's on the corner, whatever fast food option kind of makes them feel full? And so, if somebody is, talk to me about, I guess, what are you passionate about now? Like, you're passionate about, obviously, training practitioners.
Yes.
Talk to me about the normal girl in Fort Worth, Texas, like me, and how does functional medicine impact my life? And why is this something that I should look into and pursue?
Yes, and it's such a great question, and I want to kind of contextualize us. So, first, I want to say that yes, I am passionate about training practitioners at the Functional Nutrition Alliance. I'm also turning my attention back to the patient, not as a clinician, but in terms of being able to empower people with this deeper understanding of what's going on in their body and how to slow down. So, one of my favorite sayings is slow it down to speed it up. And I think we have a lot of rules. We're coming out of a time, especially for me, I'm in my mid to late 50s, where there's a lot of diet culture. There's a lot of right or wrong. There's a lot of bad or good, healthy or unhealthy. And I think this has become really, really confusing. So we're either seeking solution, or like deer in the headlights, or we're like, forget it. I can't do this anymore. Yeah. So I want to reframe the conversation, and if it's okay, reframe the question to make it more functional. So I always like to say, we are not what we eat. We are what our body can do with what we eat. And that's the functional reframe, where we're not just looking at the substances outside the body, we're understanding what's going on inside our body. Doesn't mean we each have to be a scientist, a biologist, a physiologist, but understanding what our body is reacting to and stopping to listen is what's going to give us more information and more autonomy and more empowerment when we are seeking help. Let me just give you an example what I mean by that, because there is so much noise. So we can try to look at, is coffee good or bad for me? But it's not about the coffee being good or bad. It's about what that coffee does in your body. Is gluten good or bad for me? Is sugar good or bad for me? Is red wine good or bad for me? These are isolated conversations about a food that exists outside, or a substance outside of our body, and have nothing to do with our personal body responds to the intake of that food. If we look at coffee, there's a number of reasons we might have an adverse effect or reaction to that substance, but it doesn't mean the substance is good or bad. And so I want to take away the good or bad foods, the healthy or unhealthy foods. Of course, if we're talking about processed foods, those are going to be difficult on all of us. How we feel that is what's more important to me. I want people to tune into themselves. So the three primary tenets of a functional practice are a therapeutic partnership, looking for the roots, and I want to underscore the S, and a systems-based approach. So I'm just going to look at those, and I'm sorry I'm taking my time to answer your question.
Do
but I
not
want to
apologize. I am taking feverish notes over here. You just keep talking. I love it.
So that therapeutic partnership, for me, when I'm teaching clinicians, it's about being able to be with a person in their story, in their reality. For us as patients, I want to say we need to be in a partnership with our body. Our body has something to tell us, something to teach us. It's been through its own unique experience. There are anecdotes. I'm not going to call them story or narrative because I think we've twisted those words to be something that we've made up in our head. So I'm going to call them anecdotes. The anecdotes of our life. For me, like we talked about, my loss of my husband, my realization that something was happening with my immune system and the autoimmunity. Those are all anecdotes that are important for me to understand and honor about myself. And we've overridden those with these theories and ideas we should be tuning into about food, right? Or what's good or bad, what's healthy or not healthy, which dietary protocol, should I go keto? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I be intermittent fasting? It's all theory. You are what I want you to tune into to learn about what the next step is for you. So a therapeutic partnership with your body, looking for the roots is what all functional medicine and functional nutrition talks about. But I think it's gotten lost in this notion that there is one root cause. And I want to project to everybody, there is never one root cause, but anything you are experiencing, sign, symptom, diagnosis. If I was to ask you, Rachel, what are the signs and symptoms that bug you and your audience most? What diagnoses are people showing up with? Those are branches, meaning they're the manifestation of what's happening deeper within. The roots to any chronic health condition are our genes or our genetic predisposition, our digestion, and our immune system or inflammation. Genes, digestion, inflammation. Those are where we focus our attention, no matter what the branches are, no matter the signs, the symptoms, the diagnosis. And we can't talk about nutrition without talking about that second root, which is digestion. That third principle, so I said therapeutic partnership, get in relationship with your body. Nonviolent communication with self is what I like to call it. That root causes is understanding it's not one infection I'm going to find on a test or one hormone. Those are branches. We want to think genes, digestion, inflammation. And when it comes to that systems-based approach, this is where I want us to remember that everything in the body is connected. We are not depression without the gut. We are not anxiety without the gut. We are not hormone issues without the digestion and the liver function. We are not one thing that we're experiencing, and we are not broken. We are a complex physiological system that deserves our love, active listening, support, and care. So in those moments where we're looking for something on the road to eat and we're wondering, how do I feed and fuel myself? How do we bring compassion to that situation? That may also be in that moment low blood sugar that we have to honor, because that also is not a positive thing. So I know what I would do in that situation, Rachel.
What would you do? Tell me, Andrea. I want to know. Tell me what you would do.
Big explanation. I would typically have something on hand if I knew I was going to be out of the house for a while. So I don't get on an airplane without a little food pack. Like, I'm always carrying something with me. If I get stuck in that situation, what I'm looking for in that moment is likely a grocery store where I can, or even a convenience shop. There might be some nuts. There might be a banana. If I'm desperate, the blood sugar is tanking and I need something quickly, I'm knowing what my kind of safety foods are in a, I'm going to use the word unhealthy in air quotes, world that we live in. So I'm going to look for what I know is my safe food in an arena where I know there's probably not much that I can eat.
Yes, I love that. I am learning my safe foods. Like that is such a great way to say it because I don't think I had thought about it that way. But I'm learning the things to kind of have on hand and yeah, I love that. That's amazing. So I have a question. If you're ready for me to ask you another question.
Go for it. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the
Is
spiel.
there I'm going to listen again and again and again and again because you gave so much there. Is there a link between our thought process and our health?
Mm, 1000%. We cannot separate. My mantra is everything is connected.
Mhm.
We are all unique and all things matter. So everything connected brings us back to that systems biology, the gut and the brain in particular, but the immune system in the brain. The brain and its state of health is going to be impacted by inflammatory processes in the body. It's going to be impacted by hormonal processes in the body. Both those, by the way, link us back to digestion and the gut. And so, yes, that's going to be impacted. In addition to that, when we say we are all unique, when I say everything is connected, we are all unique, I like us to look back at the history and the stories that led us here. So if we think about our thought processes, and let's say there's a propensity for monkey mind or depression or anxiety, I want us to ask ourselves, when was the first time I felt that? What was going on in my life at that time? Is this something that is true in my family lineage? Did I watch my mother or my father or my grandmother experience this? If I don't have access to that information because they're no longer here or I was adopted, where can I say this might have come from in what I do know about my ancestral background, where I came from? What am I carrying with me that helps me to understand that? It doesn't help us to fix it, but it helps us to bring a different level of compassion. If we go to the all things matter, so everything is connected, we are all unique, all things matter, that means sleep and relaxation are going to impact our mindset and our thoughts, nutrition and hydration, stress and resilience, our relationships and our networks. It's just recognizing I can't fix my mind if I'm just directing attention to it, like conventional medicine tries to do with a pill for the ill. But I can shift the terrain in which this thing that I'm challenged with is existing. And that shift allows us to think about the soil that the roots live in that are manifesting in the expression of the branches versus constantly looking to chop off the branch, quell the branch, which doesn't work for most of us.
Yeah. Why do we have so when we were kids, Andrea, we did not hear about every other person having an autoimmune disorder. We did not hear that used a lot. People were a lot leaner. Like I look back and I look at old pictures and I cannot believe how thin people were, how lean people were. What is the reason for the increase in chronic illness and obesity in our country?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not one thing. And this is where that system thinking really helps us. So we are seeing an influx of a lot of things in one period of time. There's a lot of change over our lifetimes in the health and diversity of the microbiome, which we hear a lot about. So we're exposed to more processed foods, more chemicals in the air. It's impacting our immune systems more. It's confusing our immune systems more. So we have a lot to contend with, and we've upped the ante of what's coming into the body that the body has to deal with while we are generationally changing over time because of those factors. So
Wow.
when I said those three roots, the genes, digestion, and inflammation,
Yeah.
we cannot change our genes, but we can influence our genes. And that realm of science is called epigenetics. It includes the food, the movement, the environment, and the mindset. And all of those things and my models of thinking impact our genetic expression. That is happening more and more over time, that we are shifting certain genes to turn on, certain genes to turn off. That is changing the manifestation of health in a proportional way that we're recognizing as an increase in health concerns that we're facing as globally, actually. And I think the last several years with the pandemic really brought to light the underlying conditions that people are facing, so that when you tip the scale, or that one straw that breaks the camel's back, elucidates what's happening underneath. So we would say and hear people saying a lot, my gosh, that person was perfectly healthy and then they got COVID and that was it. It wasn't just the COVID. COVID was the straw that tipped the camel's back. And we didn't see what was underneath and underlying that so many of us are dealing with, that is the hidden epidemic of inflammation.
Oh my gosh. That blows my mind. I don't think, I can't tell you, I don't think I made that connection, Andrea. Like, I can't tell you how many stories I heard where people said, healthy as a horse. Yes. And then they got COVID and never came home from the hospital. That makes so much more sense. Okay, how can we protect ourselves from the toxins? Is there a way? Is it even possible for us to protect ourselves from the toxins that are now all around us? Like, my mom was just telling me, she's an interior designer, and she was just talking to me about the off-gassing of certain pieces of furniture, rugs, things like that.
Exactly.
How do we protect ourselves, and is it even possible?
Yes, we have to. And we can't control everything in the world, right? So we can't control all the exposures we have. So there's the external exposure. This is happening. Do I need to be exposed to it? So let's say we talk about something obvious like cigarette smoke. So we don't smoke. We try not to be around secondhand smoke, right? Like, that's not even an issue in my life. Don't even need to think about it, right? But that's something we need to think about when there's off-gassing, when we're making choices about what we put on our skin, in our body. Is there some influence we can have where we limit the exposures? That's one thing we can do to the best of our abilities and to our accessibility to be making those decisions. Then there's our internal function. And again, this is what makes it functional. We are not what we eat. We are what our body can do with what we eat. We are not what we are exposed to. We are what our body can do with what we're exposed to. And this comes back down to digestion and liver function. But I'm going to back that up even further and talk about some of our easiest, best ways to detoxify. Okay.
Oh man, I'm ready. I'm ready. I got paper, I got a pen. I'm going to write everyone down. Lay it on me.
Okay. So these are my non-negotiables for everything. If you're wondering, anybody's wondering, oh my God, she's talking about so much. What do I do? Top 3 non-negotiables. I call these a non-negotiable trifecta: sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. Those areas are how we best serve our body's detoxification powers. Sleep is our number one way to detoxify. If we are not prioritizing sleep, if we're struggling with sleep, and then we're worrying about weight loss resistance or autoimmunity or whatever it is we're looking for answers for, if we're not sleeping, none of that we're looking to have happen is going to happen. And sleep is our number one way to detoxify.
So how many hours, now that we're talking about sleep, give me a number so I know. I'm going to tell my husband, no, we cannot watch another show. Andrea told me I need to sleep. How many hours?
It's hard to say how many hours for every individual. I'm going to say between 6 and 8 is ideal, likely closer to the 7, 8 realm, but different people have different needs based on what's going on in their body and what they're struggling with. And I just want to honor any young parents listening that may not be possible, but this is a prioritization. And like you're saying, Rachel, if it's a let me stay up later just to have some fun issue over sleep, then we have to do a risk and reward
Right.
conversation. The reward of staying up later with your honey to watch another movie is together time. Is there another place to slot that together time because you honor it? So you can also honor your sleep. We also want to I call it catching the wave. So our circadian rhythm works in such a way where we should be producing enough cortisol in the morning to wake us up in the morning. That then goes down through the day, and we want to fall asleep when the cortisol production is at the bottom of the ski slope. So if you can imagine a ski slope, top of the slope, that's your wake up cortisol in an ideal situation, comes down to the ground level. That's when you want to fall asleep. If we catch that second wind, oh my gosh, I love staying up because at 11 o'clock, I can get so much done. That means your cortisol is back on the rise to the top of that mountain, and you're missing the opportunity to fall asleep more easily and to stay asleep and get that restorative sleep that we all need. So I call it catching the wave, catch your wave. My wave is at 9:30, 10 o'clock. Your wave may be at 10:30. So that time frame is going to shift for all of us. Poop, we have to poop. That's how we detoxify our hormones that we don't need, the chemicals we don't need, the microbes that we don't need, the funguses we don't need, the viruses we don't need. We have to be pooping. This leads us back to hydration. Again, there's no set number. The point I'm making with all of these things is we often bypass the simplicity in favor of the complexity when the simplicity is actually what's going to get us there.
Wow. So at least once a day, poop at least once a day, right?
At least once a day. More is better, not too much more. I'm going to say 2 or 3 times a day is the ideal for most of us. If you're not there, don't panic hearing that, but tune in to when you have a good day of pooping and poop feels more full and like you're releasing versus the days where you don't, where you have more urgency, where you don't. That's that chance to slow down and go, wait a minute, sometimes this is like this, sometimes this is like this. What can I learn about myself by tuning into that information?
I love it. Okay, and blood sugar. This is a hot topic for
I
you, Andrea.
know.
I mean, I love it. I'm wearing my continuous glucose monitor right now. I check it 800 times a day. My husband's like, chill out, but I just love it. And it has changed my life, getting control of my blood sugar. And
Yes.
so talk to me about that.
Yes. So I know you're passionate about blood sugar,
Yeah.
and I love that. And, blood sugar swings can be toxic in many ways. I'm using that term loosely, but they really can impact so many things. For me, they're at the base of our hormone management. So when people are looking to control their fertility or their menstrual cycle or deal with perimenopause, and they're looking at those sex hormones, I'm like, come back down to blood sugar. It's the foundation of it all. I will say that I think too many people rush to the continuous glucose monitor before doing some baseline work. And information for me is a beautiful thing at the right time in our journey, which I am sure you are I should say. I'm sure you're at that right place in your journey. But I do worry that people are bypassing some of the basics. So I'm going to come back to the basics of how we actually can have more influence over our blood sugar before we go seeking additional information. And that is by eating fat, fiber, and protein every time we eat. So if you're eating something that is a carb, that's just fine. Where are you adding more fiber? If it needs more fiber, let's say it's a rice cake that doesn't have a lot of fiber, where do you add something to that has your good fats, avocado, and nut butter, some good coconut oil, whatever it is, and your protein? so that that works to slow the response of your blood sugar. Where do we do the work before looking for the answers? Because it gives us more information to
Mm,
know, oh, here's where I can tune into what's specific to me instead of embracing the more general
mm,
information. When you hear that, Rachel, how does that relate to your experience with the continuous glucose monitor? If I say fat, fiber, protein,
yeah.
do you see a difference in what you're measuring when you eat like that?
100%. Yes. I mean, such a huge difference that it's pretty shocking.
Yes.
And I was dipping very, very low in my blood sugar. And so I was having super highs and then super lows. And then I would stay low for a long time. I was all over the place. I was a mess. And what I realized is that I was not eating enough fat.
Yes.
I was not eating enough fat. And I think that I'm old enough to remember the low fat diet
Yes.
fad of my youth, where it was like, don't eat any fat at all. 0 grams of fat per day is the goal. And that is just but you kind of get brainwashed and at an early age. And so you're always thinking
Yes.
about that. So I was kind of always trying to do protein, but lean protein and not incorporating enough fat. Fiber, I think, is always easy for me to get in because I love high fiber foods. And so I was doing that, but the fat for me was a huge indicator. And so that's been beneficial. And I've been on this journey now for a while, but what benefited me with the continuous glucose monitor was to see in real time
Yes.
what my body was doing with certain foods that I was putting in.
Yeah,
And
and
so
I love it for the same reason. I do think some people engage in the measurement before they've done the work to have the feeling, and then the information is reliant on an external factor versus the inclusion of the internal factor. And that's my only point in
Mhm,
where I think sometimes we jump ship
mhm.
to the external information. And the old version of that would be the scale. How do I feel in my body versus what does the number tell me on the scale? And so I'm just bringing us back to tune
Yes.
in before you tune out.
Oh my gosh.
Information is great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I this is like one of the most brilliant quotes that I've ever seen in my whole life on your Instagram. And you said, one key to longevity is to stop being a stranger in your own body. And so
Exactly.
there has been a a major process for me mentally, emotionally, like as women, I think that emotionally we have so many different things getting thrown at us about body image and about all these things.
Totally.
I was when I read that, it almost knocked me over. I was like, I was and have been for my entire life a stranger in my own body. And I was not listening intuitively to what my body was telling me. And so now I'm so lucky to have kind of a team of people around me that speak life into me and say, okay, this might be what the scale says, but what does your body say to you right now? And that
Yes.
has been so liberating for me. And through that process, I am the leanest I've ever been. I'm the strongest I've ever been physically.
Yes.
I feel better than I've ever felt through that intuitive process of listening to my body. So I could not agree with you more. And man, I am just so so grateful. We could literally talk for hours. Like I kind of want to just come to your house and I won't say a word. I'm just going to listen to you talk on the phone. I'm just going to listen to all of your wisdom, soak it all up. But Andrea, thank you so much for everything you taught us. And I hate to even cut this off because there's so much more. But okay, I have a question for you. So let's say that Rachel Roth is now on this journey and just passion and it lights my soul on fire. And I want to become a functional medicine practitioner. Is that something that a normal person can do without going to medical school? Is this something that I can come to your company and now get
Yes.
this certification through?
Yes, absolutely. So, what we train at the Functional Nutrition Alliance is people to become functional nutrition counselors. I'm always going to speak about scope. So we may have doctors or nurses or dietitians or physician's assistants in the program, and they are looking to add functional nutrition training to their practices. Bravo. I love that, because even functional medicine doctors are not trained in nutrition, right? So great that they're getting that piece. We also have a good number of health coaches and people who have no healthcare background prior to coming into our program, but they have a passion for food as medicine. They've had an experience like yours, Rachel. Maybe they've had a child on the spectrum and they're very passionate about what they've been able to do for their child. Maybe they've gone through a cancer treatment, breast cancer treatment. They sailed through their chemotherapy and noticed everybody else around them wasn't. They have a passion for this field. And yes, that person can get out there and do this work. We're always, like I said, going to talk about scope. The difference of what different people with different backgrounds is going to do with that training is a real thing. I'm not playing doctor. I cannot diagnose. I cannot prescribe. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. I can assess, I can recommend, and I can track. And I call that the art of the practice. That's cyclical. And that's the takeaway I want to give to anybody, whether they want to become a functional nutrition counselor or they're on this journey with themselves. The art of the practice is assess, make a recommendation for yourself, and track what you're able to, which is exactly what you're doing, Rachel, so beautifully. As you're going through what you're going through, you're assessing information, you're learning, what can I do about what I'm learning? How do I track the difference? And how does that continue to inform me versus you're on a journey versus looking for the quick fix. So that art of the practice is something we can all do. And I believe there's a need for more people to receive support in their everyday self-care and not being a stranger with their body. And anybody with any background with the training that I give in full body systems can be that advocate for others.
Oh, Andrea, I love what you are doing for the world. And it is so admirable. And you are a hero. I mean, you really are. You're changing lives. And everything that you just described, you just gave me so much information, but you did it in a way that I could understand, that I could digest. None of this, anybody who's listening right now, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like I felt overwhelmed in the beginning, it's a lot of information. I promise you, Andrea felt really overwhelmed in the beginning too. It's so much information, but you just do one thing at a time,
Yes.
and man, this is just incredible. So Andrea, if people want to find you, where do they go to find you?
If you go to andreanakayama.com or Andrea Nakayama on any social platform, that will always lead you back to the Functional Nutrition Alliance, to my podcast, and to the work that I'm doing now that's more patient focused. So andreanakayama.com, all A's, and that will lead you where you want to go, including our clinic over at the Functional Nutrition Alliance if anybody's looking for clinical support.
I just am so, so grateful. And just so you know, nothing that Andrea is doing is a small scale. She runs the Functional Nutrition Alliance is a massive organization now, training thousands and thousands of practitioners a year to do this. So this is not like a small thing. It has grown and grown and grown because I think that people are catching on to
Yes.
this concept for the first time and saying, wait a minute, something's not right. Like I want to get to the bottom of this. And so I just love it. I'm going to put all of your links, all of your information in the show notes so that anybody who is interested can find you really, really easily with a click of a button. So thank you. You are a busy woman. You are a brilliant woman. And the fact that you took an hour to spend just educating me and my friends, I am so grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for such a rich discussion.
I loved it. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.